Today's video is about using parentheses in math equations and also about solving multi-step problems. This math equation contains parentheses, and parentheses are grouping symbols. What they tell us is that anything in the parentheses should be solved first in the equation. So in this equation, watch how I use my math talk to talk my way through solving it. To begin with, I will divide 12 by 4, that's in the grouping symbols. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Now I will take that 3 and add the 2 to it. 3 plus 2 is 5, which means n is equal to 5. Now here's the same exact equation, except this time my parentheses are in a different part of the equation. So watch how I use Math Talk to explain how to solve this problem. First, I will perform the operation 4 plus 2 that's in the parentheses, since that comes first, and 4 plus 2 is 6. Now, I will take 12 divided by 6 to get n, which is 2. So, n is equal to 2. Now take a look at this multi-step problem. Ryan bought one notebook for 88 cents and 6 folders for 30 cents each. How much did Ryan spend altogether? This is a multi-step story problem. We need to use parentheses in this problem to solve part of it first. If you're thinking about the problem, think about what you know. Ryan is our character. We know he bought one notebook for 88 cents, and then we know he bought 6 folders for 30 cents each. We need the solution equation for this problem. To begin with, I will use that 88 cents. And I will be putting it all together, which tells me we're going to be using addition. So I'll be adding on to that the folders. But notice the folders, I need to take 6 times the 30 cents each. That's where my parentheses come in. 6 times my 30 cents. I don't have enough room to put my equal sign, so I'll just kind of go down here and do it. I wish I had a little more room, but I would need an equal sign and then a variable or letter to show that all of this is going to be equal to how much money Ryan spent. Now I just need to solve the equation, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I can put my answer here is $1. So my answer here is $sign for my label, $2.68. So as you remember, we must do the parentheses first. So I'm going to take 0.30 or 30 hundredths times 6. To do this problem, I simply multiply 6 times 0, 6 times 3. Then I have to count how many places altogether are behind the decimal point. So there's 2 of them right here. So I need 2 places in my decimal point. So 1.80 is my answer. Oops, first I have to finish my equation. I almost forgot. So I have $1.80. Now I'm going to go ahead and add on my 88. So now I'm going to line up my decimal points, since we need to line up decimal points when we're doing addition. So 8 plus 0, 8 plus 8, and 1 plus 1. Putting my decimal point where it belongs. So $2.68. Let's take a few minutes to solve some equations with problems that you will need to remind yourself how to solve the equation. So in this first one, I have parentheses around the 3 1/2 minus 1/8. If you've forgotten how to subtract, let's take a look at that. So first of all, we remember we can't subtract fractions that have different denominators. So we need to find that common denominator between 2 and 8. We know that 2 goes into 8, or is a factor of 8, so therefore we can use the 8. So we're going to keep 1/8 the same, but change 1/2 to eighths. That means I'm going to have to think, what times 2 equals 8? Well, that'd be 4. So I'll do the same to the top. 1 times 4 is 4, and I'll keep my whole number. Now I can subtract 4 minus 1. Keep the denominator the same, and 3 minus 0. So I have 3 3/8. Now, the next step is to multiply my 3 3/8 times 2. because these are multi-step problems. Do you remember how to multiply a fraction times a whole number? Let's take a look. So if I go back to my original problem, D is equal to 6 3/4. And that's my final answer. I sure hope you're following along with these problems because you will have to solve problems just like these in today's assignment. So really pay attention and remind yourself how to solve these kinds of problems. Here we have a division problem in parentheses, and then we're adding on 3/4. We just need to finish our equation by giving it a variable. Now, to solve this, you have to remind yourself how to divide fractions to start. I need to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. So again, 1 right here times 4 plus 3 is 7, and my denominator stays the same. When I'm dividing, I change it over to multiplication and use the reciprocal of 4, which would be 1/4. Now I multiply 7 times 1 and 4 times 4, and I get 7/16. To this, I want to add 3/4. I cannot add two fractions with different denominators, so I need a common denominator. 16 is a multiple of 4, so therefore I can use 16 as my common denominator. Now, what times 4 is equal to 16? Well, that would be 4, and 4 times 3 is 12. Now, if I add this together, 12 plus 7 is 19/16. I need to change this to it's an improper fraction, so I need to change it to a mixed number. 16 goes into 19 once, 3 left over, and 1 3/16 is my final answer. So R is equal to 1 3/16. Here's one more problem I'd like to solve so that you remember how to do decimals. In my parentheses, I'm multiplying 0.6 times 3. When I multiply, I simply could take 3 times 6, which is 18, and think about how many decimal places are there in my two factors. There's 1, so my answer is 1.8. Then I'm going to subtract 2 55/100 minus 1.8. When we add and subtract, we have to line up our decimal points. They have to be in line. Now I can add a placeholder here, subtract 5 minus 0. I cannot take 5 minus 8, so I need to ungroup the 2. Now I have 15 minus 8. Put my decimal point so it lines up, and then a 0 here. So now I have my final answer of T is equal to 75/100. Now it's time to look at some two-step story problems. This first one says an auditorium has 94 rows of seats with 45 seats in each row, and 720 of those seats are reserved. So how many seats are not reserved? To solve this problem, we have to look at the information we have. We know how many rows, and we know how many seats in each row. We also know how many seats are reserved, but we don't know how many are not reserved. First of all, what we don't know is how many total seats there are in the auditorium. So this again is going to be a multi-step equation with parentheses. So the first thing we'd have to do is find out how many seats there are total. That involves taking 95 times 45, the number of rows times the number of seats in each row. Then, from there, we know how many seats are reserved, but we don't know how many are not reserved. So that means we're most likely going to need to take that 95 times 45, which is the total number of seats in the whole auditorium, and subtract from that the 720 seats that are reserved. And that should tell us how many are not reserved. So let's not solve this equation right now, but you can see how the equation's set up. And it's just basic multiplication and subtraction. Now let's take a look at a story problem where there's too little information to solve it. It says Mrs. Norton's class has been arranged into equal groups for an activity. There are 5 students in each group. How many students are participating in the activity? Well, in order to find that out, I need more information. Can you think what information we would need? In order to solve this problem, we need to know how many groups there are. If I knew, for example, that there were 6 groups, then I would know that each group has 5 students, and 6 groups with 5 students in each would be 30 total students. So we don't know how many groups there are, and that's what we would need. Here's a situation where a story problem gives us too much information. Let's read it. To prepare for a math test, Alex studied for 1/2 hour. Mackenzie studied for 1/5 hour, and Shayla studied for 5/6 hours. How much longer did Alex study than Mackenzie? Well, to solve this question of how much longer Alex studied than Mackenzie, there is some information in our problem that we don't even need. That's too much information. Can you figure out what part of the story problem we didn't need? If you're looking at the fact that Shayla studied for 5/6 hours, that has nothing to do with our question. Shayla's not even in our question, so that is the extra information. To solve this problem, I would have to take the 1/2 that Alex studied, and I would have to subtract from it the 1/5 that Mackenzie studied. So that's how I would solve this problem. I hope these tutorials have helped you today to get ready for math class. I think it's going to be a good one. Bye, everyone. First of all, if I'm going to multiply 3 3/8 times 2, I have to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. To do that, I start with my whole number 3, take it times 8, and add on my numerator. 3 times 8 is 24, plus 3 is 27/8. Remember, the denominator stays the same. Now, I can change my 2 to 2 over 1, and now I can simply multiply across. 27 times 2, which is equal to 54, and 8 times 1, which is equal to 8. Now this improper fraction has to be changed back to a mixed number. So I've taken the time to divide 8 into 54 6 times. I get a remainder of 6, which means that my whole number is 6, my numerator is 6, and my denominator stays the same. But now 6 and 6/8 can be simplified because 6/8 can be divided down by 2. So I will have 6 3/4 for my final answer.